Greetings, Panther professionals. This screencast is designed to take you through some synchronous, asynchronous planning considerations and through some remote learning models that we've developed to help inform your planning for the opening of the 2021 school year in a fully remote setting. So all the resources I'm going to be talking about here are on the SVSD Secondary Tech Resources site that you have access to. I will send another link to this along with this screencast in an email to everyone. So the Synchronous Asynchronous Planning document, I collaborated on this with some coaches and some curriculum supervisors in other districts. And essentially, it's just taking you through the key elements of asynchronous instruction and whether you want kids to consume, engage, or apply learning. And asynchronous simply means, again, that you're putting materials out there for us. Out there is in Google Classroom, and students are completing them at their own pace on their own timetable. And as long as they're getting everything done by the due date, that's perfectly acceptable. Synchronous is more approximating our traditional classroom model where students come in for 42 or 80 minutes, depending on the level at Schuylkill Valley, and they are doing activities roughly on the same time schedule together in class with the teacher available. And in our remote learning to open the year, we're going to recommend that you have a mix of synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And I'll get to some of the tools and those learning models in just a second. But you can go down the list here on this first page of the document and see in asynchronous what it looks like when you have students consuming information, engaging with each other. This is independent practice and group work, and then applying what they've learned. And that would be more of a long-term project-based kind of approach. We're also going to talk about assessment a little bit later, and that's a key element of asynchronous instruction, long-term projects, which we typically do in our traditional class model anyway, but students are doing a lot of that work outside of class, although not all of it. And then synchronous, what does it look like when we're asking students to, consume material? We're presenting new knowledge, new content, new material. And what does it look like when students are engaging, right, collaborating and discussing? And what does it look like when they're applying in a synchronous model? Okay, so you can just take a look at these on this page, and then a little bit more detail, specific examples for you on the remote learning. And I put these models together based on a lot of questions I was getting from teachers, like I said, about, hey, what does this exactly look like in my classroom this year? And I have some recommendations for you coming up. But I have a couple little models in here, gradual release of responsibility, right? I referred to the I do, we do it, you do it together, you do it alone model, right? Here's teacher responsibility. And this is probably where we are in a regular classroom setting. But in a fully asynchronous environment, it's more like this. All right, so you have these two inverted triangles kind of symbolizing that. And here's some, teacher-student responsibilities in the various stages of I do it, we do it, you do it independently, you do it together, and what that learning may look like. And then this is a chart I found and put in for more like station work, if you've got students moving through different stations, which we're going to talk about how you might do that with some of the tools as well. Okay, so these learning models, I just put these together and made some suggestions in red here for different electronic apps that you may want to use to accomplish some of these things. So 2 traditional models and a flipped model. Flip just means the new learning takes place before class begins. So let's take a look at these very quickly. So you're going to take attendance in Sapphire. The synchronous student-teacher connection part of this whole remote model is going to come via Meet or Zoom. So you want to start your Zoom or Meet at the beginning of the scheduled class time. Students log in. Zoom, you can currently take attendance right through the Zoom control panel. And Meet, that feature is coming soon, which take attendance. And then you could present live your information, or you could pre-record it using Screencastify. I recommend that you pre-record it just because you get it done in advance. You know that it's 10 to 12 minutes long. It provides a lot of continuity and consistency, especially if you're teaching the same content over multiple classes, the same course. And then I would recommend about 15-minute max in the 40-minute traditional model for that. Shared practice, discussion, group collaboration around 15 minutes. You could do this via Zoom or Meet. Student uses the chat to ask questions, teacher answers live. And to facilitate this, you could use Jamboard. By the way, I have all these resources down the left-hand side here. Jamboard might be unfamiliar to you. It's a really easy tool to use that's integrated in G Suite for Education. So you might want to check out that tutorial or those tutorials. I did one, and then I've got 2 others on there from other tech coaches that you may find useful. But so you can use Jamboard, slides, Google Drawings, right, to facilitate that collaboration. Guided practice, you could use Google Doc, you could use a form. Flipgrid would be really good for that. Formative assessment, exit ticket, about 5 minutes. We're really encouraging formative assessment for every lesson so that we can, really keep a handle on whether students are meeting the learning goals that we had in mind when we planned the lesson. So Google Form, a Zoom Meet poll or Q&A, Kahoot, Quizzes. If you haven't used Quizzes, I really recommend you check that out. I also have that over here under Review Games on the site. I have Kahoot, Quizzes, and Quizlet Live. Tutorials on all 3, and you can use whichever one works best for you. And then asynchronous. So we typically do asynchronous assigning of work. That's homework. So you give students an assignment, independent or group assignment, and you set the due date, and there are all kinds of ways to get that done, right? Flipgrid, Edpuzzle, Kahoot, Quizzes. The difference in the B model here is this is shared practice, discussion group, collaboration. This one has small group stations where you've got different activities for students to do, and maybe you do this over several class periods in the 40-minute high school period model. Everything else on here looks pretty much the same as we had up here. And then I have a flipped model for you right here. Asynchronous lesson to be completed prior to the start of class. So you do your screencast, or you prepare an Edpuzzle, and you have maybe a Quizlet vocab list, or you have an assignment on a Google form, and students have to complete that before they come into class. Then when class begins, you take attendance. Then you issue some kind of challenge problem or some kind of, have you ever wondered why, inquiry question. And then you can do whole class, small group via breakout rooms. Teacher checks in, monitors progress. You could use, again, to organize student work, you could use slides, Google Drawing, Jamboard. Class discussion and feedback on the assignment and the challenge problem. Of course, that's going to take place via Zoom or Meet. Again, that's our teacher-student connection piece. Formative assessment. Then again, you want some kind of test of knowledge, and assign required asynchronous assignment, screencast, Edpuzzle, G-form assignment for the next class period. And then in the middle school model, it's very similar, but it is, of course, based on 80-minute periods. The one thing that I really recommend for both levels, since we're requiring students to essentially be on meetings, Zoom or Meet, all day for student accountability, I would really recommend, whenever possible, to, for independent practice, to try to give students the opportunity to do what I'm calling unplugged activities, right? Paper, pencil kind of stuff, where students at the end of that task can take a photo and attach that to an assignment in Google Classroom, do a drawing, do a flow chart, a sketch, something. Record yourself on Screencastify Webcam, talking about a specific object or working through a problem, and upload that. Basically, to try to give them a change of pace where they're not looking at a device, a screen, all day. And your formative assessment and asynchronous pieces are are here as you've seen below, right? And again, model B, just like in the high school model, instead of you doing a class discussion or collaboration, you're doing small group stations. That's the big change in model A and B. And then of course there's the flipped model. Remote teaching is perfect for trying out the flipped model. You do your screencast in advance. Students work on that. And then when they come in, having completed the screencast, ed puzzle, form, whatever it is, now you issue, some kind of challenge or some kind of group assignment based on that preliminary work, and you go from there. So a couple of the questions that I've had from teachers in in-person meetings over the last several weeks is, should I set up a webcam in my room and record myself teaching in front of an empty classroom and beam that to all my students live? You can certainly do that. I will tell you that the technology there that we have at our disposal is not really set up to do that. So the internal webcam on the computers is not great for recording, large, like a classroom setting like that. You're better off preparing your materials in advance, doing screencasts, or if you're going to teach live in Meet or Zoom, using the share screen to show content, to show your Google slideshow or your notes or whatever it is that you want students to do, rather than trying to record yourself at the board teaching to no one live in front of you. The other big question I have is, what about tests and quizzes? I'm going to strongly encourage you to rethink testing and quizzing students. So during class time live on Zoom and Meet, if you want to give traditional, what we think of as paper pencil tests, you want to use self-grading forms in via Classroom, that's good, but you need to be aware of a couple things. First off, students, if you're assigning those types of tests and quizzes, can work around your typical classroom no cheating security features, right? So they could have another device open off screen. They could have a phone right by the computer where they're looking at things. They could have a private chat going on with other members of the class to discuss answers. So be aware of that. What we think of as our lockdown quizzing and testing procedures may not be so locked down in this setting, and there's no real way around that. You can use locked mode on the Chromebooks, but they could still have another device open, or they could be on a totally separate Discord chat channel, or FaceTiming with friends. There's so many ways around that. So just be aware of that. You may also want to consider more performance tasks where it's just inherently harder to, quote, cheat, unquote, right? So you want to think about maybe giving students more projects that they're going to complete on their own time or in group work, and just more authentic assessment, which is a excellent gauge of actual learning and much harder to cheat on. Okay, so those are just some of the considerations coming out of the meetings I have with teachers. Hopefully you find these materials helpful. And again, I strongly encourage you to go to the resources page and check out all the resources. This one may be new to you. This works in both Zoom and Meet, sharing a digital interactive whiteboard activity using Jamboard. So definitely check this out. If you have any questions on your planning, or you want some further examples of synchronous and asynchronous planning and activities, of course, you should just let me know.